In Titus 2, older women are commanded to teach what is good so they can help younger women love their husbands and children. On today's show, you'll hear from older women who will share timeless, relevant biblical wisdom and personal, profound life experiences to help answer your questions and teach what God says is good so you can be the wife and mother you were created to be. Welcome to another episode of Older Women Likewise.
Good evening. What a joy to have you with us this evening. We are really glad to bring another episode, and I call it an episode of Growing Pains. Last week, Cindy and I talked about from challenges to strengths, and we talked about how that in your 20s and 30s, or from your children or childhood and teenager and 20s and 30s, how there were so many different growing pains and things that made life difficult from time to time. Well, tonight we're going to continue that in from your 40s and 50s, 60s, and on, because life never seems like it gets just easy. Does it, ladies? What do you think?
No. Easier in some ways, but never gets easy.
Right.
Challenges.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like we always have one or two anyway. So I ask you all to think about some growing pains or some challenges in your 40s, 50s, or 60s or so forth. Jill, what did you think of that you would like to talk about this evening?
One of the things I thought about is learning to slow down a little bit and I'm not a high intensity person, but you get caught up in so many different things, and but rather than do so many things, just more. I think I've gotten more in depth in my thinking, my spiritual thinking, and
And I think that's one that, for me at least, comes for two reasons. One, the children are gone and my life isn't as chaotic. And health. I mean, as you get older, you just don't have the energy anymore that you had. I mean, health or not health, you don't. And I think that's almost out of necessity, we start slowing down.
Yeah. That's right.
Go ahead. Sorry. Well, I was going to say, kind of along that line, because one of the things that I thought about was health issues, and I thought about Ecclesiastes in chapter 11, and especially the New Living Translation. It says, chapter 11, verse 8 says this: when people live to be very old, let them rejoice in every day of life, but let them also remember there will be many dark days. And, it's easy. I know even in my 50s and my early 60s, I didn't have any health issues other than my asthma, but it was like, I can still go, but there will be dark days. And my husband has always been very healthy and very strong and very robust. And 3 years ago, wham, he was hit with a cervical cord, and nearly paralyzed him. And he's had 5 surgeries in 2 years.
Wow. And
he walks on a cane and he still goes, but he is limited. And that was just from wearing out, the doctor said.
Yeah.
And in chapter 12 of Ecclesiastes, it says, remember your creator in your youth, and we remember that. But the last part of it says, before the evil days come, and the years draw near, of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. And I think the point for us all is enjoy your life, but you're gonna age, and you need to be prepared for that. And there are a lot of people who have not, if you're fortunate enough to grow old, then you've got to be prepared mentally to accept the challenges, because there will be challenges, and you will slow down, like Jill said.
Yeah. Yeah, my husband has also had some major health issues along the way. And I think part of that slowing down is realizing how to take it one day at a time, live in the present with an eye to the future and remember the mistakes of your past. But, some days I feel like bustling around and doing things, and other days I just have to take it easier. And then I think all those things I put off, because I'm a great procrastinator, all those things I put off that I thought I'd get to one day, now, I don't feel so much like doing some of those things anymore.
Yeah.
So, I guess, what do I say? Don't procrastinate. Procrastinators know what I mean. I mean, that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
There's something to feel for that.
Yeah.
But there are things that I used to think were so important that I really wanted to do. And that I just, that when, as soon as I retired, boy, I was going to jump right on that and get that done. And then after a while, it's like, that's not really that important after all. And I find that I am more interested. I think I've been retired now, 12 or 13 years, something like that. I'm much more interested in relationships with people than I am in the things around me, and I'm much more interested in teaching the Bible, teaching the gospel, and reaching out to people and doing good works, for people, and than I am in decorating the house or, even crafts or things. Things I do are more with the view in mind of reaching out to people. And do y'all find that to be true too, that those personal relationships as well as the spiritual ones more important?
It's a little harder for me in a new place because, my mom had always told me this: the older you get, the harder it is to adapt to change. And she's 94 now.
Wow.
She was living with us for a while, and I saw by observing her that, it gave me new energy to study, especially to study in God's word. And because there may come a time when I'm not capable of doing that, even though I'm still here on the earth. That's another growing pain we have to deal with, the fact that we may lose some of our mental abilities.
Right.
Well, I think that for me, I feel very much that way about the physical things, and I've always done crafts, and I do them occasionally, but now it's more for gifts or things like that. And it's more of a forced thing, because I'd much rather be studying or, like you say, working with relationships and things like that. And I think a lot of that is the older we get, and hopefully the more that we have spiritually grown, the more it's like, man, praise God, this world is not my home.
Yes.
And I don't want to invent. I don't have the. And I guess I know my days are numbered, and I think, and I don't mean to be morbid by that, but I mean, honestly, how much longer do we really have to live? And even if it's 20 or 25 more years, that isn't as long. And when you get our age, you look back and you think, 25 years isn't that long.
It's been long.
And our priorities, just your priorities change. And I think to me, growing pain, part of the growing process is recognizing I'm aging, and I can only do what I can do. And what's the most important thing? And that sure changes, because I don't have the energy to do all the things I used to do.
Right. Well, and I don't have the same desire, because
Mm-mm.
Like, I love to make things too. I used to sew and paint, and then I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this when I'm finished with it?
Exactly. You can only use so many quilts.
Yeah, I need another one of those.
Yeah.
So I've gotten the things I need. I'm trying to stretch everything out so it just lasts me. I still have a box of clothes. We've downsized twice, but I still have a box of clothes I went through today. And I thought, well, maybe I'll still get skinny. I'll shrivel up a little. Go buy new clothes. I bought these to last.
There you go. They were going to make it. When I think about aging, I think about in 2 Corinthians 4, where Paul said, though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. And I comfort myself, I think, by saying that, the Lord planned this out really good. Because if I were in wonderful physical shape, and if I felt good all day, every day, and I just could do whatever I wanted to, I would be wanting to stay on this earth instead of be wanting to go back home again, be ready to.
I think that is such a valid point, and he planned it out for a reason.
Yeah.
I say, I'll tell you one thing positive. I think that when I go to meet with the brethren, I really enjoy sitting on a pew and listening to a sermon. I'm not distracted by the children or worrying about what I'm going to be doing at work this week or anything like that. And I really enjoy my time together with brothers and sisters, and it's more intense, I think.
There are serious benefits to growing older.
That's true.
They are. Yeah.
I forgot what I was going to say. Oh well. I remember thinking when I was young, probably even 30 and 40, because that's young now, that I remember looking at older women and thinking, oh, they just let themselves go. I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to just be robust and strong. I'm just going to be going and doing. And now I think, well, they just don't. I didn't know. I just didn't know. As much as you don't, as you think, well, I'm going to be, your body has its own ideas. And I think if I were going to say anything to somebody younger, is as your body changes, don't get mad about it or feel like, oh no, I failed. I mean, there's some changes that affect women that you can't help. I mean, it's not.
But it's the fact that we're going to age. That's what the Bible tells us you're going to do. If you live, you are going to age, and that's what Ecclesiastes. That's what the writer is saying. Just know the dark days are coming, and what's important, and that's the whole point of that book. Is what's important is how have you lived for God, and it's foolish of us to think, well, I'm not going to get old, or I'm not going to get sick, or I'm not going to have, that you didn't take care of yourself. Well, that's foolish to think that. And I know that some people don't and all that, but that's not what we're talking about. You're going to age, and that's okay. And there's glory in that if you have grown in wisdom and maturity spiritually.
And it is difficult to see that sometimes because our culture tries to send the opposite message.
Right. But you can live forever,
Yeah.
And it's important how you look, that you don't look 70 when you're 70.
Oh, well.
Yeah. I mean,
lost that one.
Just going to look in the mirror one day and it's going to be there.
Lost that battle.
I always told them at school when they took my picture, try to have only one chin in there.
Do this.
We have a friend that does this all the time. When you take a
There you
picture,
go.
always.
You know, what I found is it just pushes it up.
Yeah. So, but I tell you that the aging thing is a growing pain, and I think it does take. You have to set your mind to it.
Yes.
And I would love for there to be no mirrors in my house. But now this, of course, I do Zoom classes and I do this. So I'm constantly looking at myself. And at first it really bothered me. I'm going, oh, and now I'm just like, hey, this is me, and, but it does take a bit to get past that, I think. But we have to set our minds, because like you said, the book of Ecclesiastes tells us that's what's happening. I read a quote one time that I thought was so good about, life expectancy. It said, the terminally ill person knows that their time is short. The rest of us are just kidding ourselves.
Yeah.
And I thought that is so, I think of that when I think, oh, well, I can live, I'm going to, in 20 years, I'm thinking, I'm just kidding myself, So, Jill, I think you had a thought.
I did have a thought. She can read my mind now,
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
But this is just an earthly constraint that's put on us. This is only going to affect us while we're here on the earth. We won't have to worry about all that stuff when we get our.
I'm looking for the body.
Yeah. And I think we either can, as you age, you can either just bemoan every day that your body is failing, or you can, like you say, look forward to the next world. Marcia Gray Patterson had a point for us. It's important to accept yourself as you are, because we are God's creation. Old people are not, I shouldn't say old people, but older people are not meant to look like 20 and 30-year-old. It's weird when they do. And we accept, strange, I think. So.
Yeah.
Jill?
I forgot.
Oh, okay. That's all right. We do that all the time. Another one that I wanted us to talk about that is a real growing pain, and it starts, in your 30s, 40s, depending on what age you were when your children were born, is adult children. As your children, not just teenagers. Teenagers are hard enough, really. But that's quick. You got to think on your feet and keep it going. But now when you have adult children, it can be a difficult thing. It can be it's a real blessing that you have children. If you were blessed to have children, that they've grown up to be adults. That's a great blessing. But there can be some painful things about that. Dana, what do you think? What are you thinking on that for us?
Well, a couple of thoughts that I had, and I have to say, I have 3 children, and I am so blessed. They are all faithful. They're in their 40s, and I'm so blessed. And I know I am so blessed. But I think one of the things that I've seen over the years, my husband's been preaching for over 40 years, and he's been an elder a number of different places. And one of the things that I've seen is people, as we get older and we enter that empty nest period and we start having the older children, and especially it seems mothers can lose their identity because that's how they have identified themselves as a mother. And that is a mistake for multiple reasons, because you are a mother such a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And so your identity can't be there. And, we've talked before about how we can do the best we can with our children. And that's so important, that we study with them and that we teach them and that we do the best we can. But once they're gone to some degree. And I need to remember, whether they stay faithful or whether they don't to the Lord, it's the soul that sins that's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't choose for them to worship God or not to worship God. And I need to be remember that. And I will say, as a caveat to that, I don't believe as a mature mother that I still don't have influence. And I'm reminded of when Eli in 1 Samuel chapter 3, when God says, that he was going to punish the house of Eli because let me see how it says. It says, for I told him that I will judge his house for the iniquity which he knows, because his sons made themselves vile and he did not restrain them. And if you go and you look at that, his sons were already priests when they were being vile. So they were well into their adulthood, and yet he didn't restrain them. So I have an obligation, even as a mother of grown children, to do what I can, but I can't control them. But Eli didn't make the effort to. He ignored that, if you will. And I think there's this fine line of that we have to walk. But I can't live in guilt when my children don't follow the Lord. And even if I made mistakes, even if I look back and say, oh, I didn't do this, I should have done that, I wish I'd have done that. I did it, or I did, and I just have to move on. And that is painful, but it's real. It's real.
Yeah, it is. It's so, it's really hard. It's so easy for us as mothers to take on every guilt.
Right.
Oh, they did this. Oh, it was my fault. I didn't do it. And we don't always do the opposite with the praise, as it were. Oh, your child is so wonderful. That was me. We don't usually say that. Oh, they're just good kids, But we take on the guilt. But you're right. We are not responsible for them on that day-to-day basis. They are, if they're older, whether they're older Christians, whether they've fallen away or never became Christians, and that happens too. They are their own person, and it's hard. It's like you got to let them sail on, and we say what we can from time to time, of course, but a lot of times just constantly, beating on somebody about it. It's not like they don't know what you stand for. It should be that, they know where you are. Jill?
Yeah. And, having your children move from your household to their own, from childhood to adulthood, it's a change. There are adjustments to be made, but you can determine how much you want to agonize over it. I think that's kind of part of what you're saying.
Right.
If you've done the best you can, here's my scripture for the evening. She hath done what she could. If you've done your best and you've laid the groundwork, and they make choices you don't approve of, that doesn't mean you failed. I think that was an excellent point, Dana.
Yeah.
Well, and I just want to emphasize, I have counseled with so many women who have sat and cried and mourned about, I wish I had done this, and I wish they had too. They made mistakes. They messed up. They were too busy. Their priorities were wrong, et cetera, et cetera. But there's not anything you can do about it now except repent and pray, and go forward and do what you can. And I think that's what we all have. There are no perfect parents, and there are no perfect kids, and we, if you're still raising them, do the best you can. But if they're raised, you got to live with the consequences, and you can be paralyzed with guilt, or you can do the best you can and influence others around you. And there are young people around you can influence, and there are mothers you can influence. And we have to just repent and move on, but we can't be paralyzed with guilt. And that is a
Right.
growing pain. That is a pain.
It is. And I think no matter how wonderful your children are, there still are going to be some things that they do that you will say, "Oh, I wish you didn't do that. I wish, you know, even though it would be a judgment, not necessarily sinful, but you just, and
That's not the way I do it.
yeah, I would do it. Yeah, I always tell my kids, I said, well, I would never want to live at your house because you don't do things the right way. And then, of course, I laugh because that's my opinion. They're not doing it the way I would do it. And that's fine when you're younger. You can keep your mouth shut better. But the older you get, the less filter you have. And pretty soon you're saying, you're doing it the wrong way. So, but that's hard. You have to practice that. I think as a parent, you have to practice not saying anything. And I think you have to tell your children, I know it would be wrong for me to say anything. And so I just want you to know in the future, when I start complaining and criticizing, that's not how I really feel. That's what I tell mine all the time. It's not how I really feel. I really feel like you ought to live your own life. Jill?
I think that's the thought that I had forgotten a while ago that I was wanting to talk about is the tendency or the temptation to complain.
Mm-hmm.
And that would go across the board for anything. But like you say, you do start to lose your filter a little bit. But I have to tell myself, what purpose is there in my saying I don't like something or I wish things were a different way? It's not going to accomplish anything. So you have to think of purpose, I think, before you open your mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's where your life can increase, right? Tell it to the Father. Tell it to Jesus. They'll bear your burdens for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we're talking with our adult children, one thing that we have to do, I think, especially when we have children who are grown, I mean, they're adult, and there's so many times it happens and it happened to us, all of our kids came back home again, one at a time. And, they would come and live with us, sometimes married, sometimes not. But they needed a boost. They had started out and it hadn't worked out. And so they needed another little help. But it was important. And that was a growing pain for both of us. We were used to being on our own. And now we've got these people, in our house. And we were glad to have them there. But, day to day gets you. But you need to talk about your expectations for this experience. Okay, you're here with us because you need 6 months, a year, or whatever, without paying bills so that you can get your own place. But you need to talk about that. I think sometimes we just expect our children to know how we feel. And, they don't always. This is a new experience for them, too, being an adult and all. So, I think, and, if it's your home that they're in, you need to define the boundaries, the requirements, and what you expect them to do and what you expect to do. And on the same way, if you end up living with your adult children, y'all need to sit down together, and talk about that.
Right.
Have either of you had experience with adult children living with you?
Our oldest son came back for a while right after he got married, he and his wife, which is different having your married child living in your household. And he, of course, was supposed to be the head of his household. But they came, it was less than a year that he was finishing up school. And, but yeah, and laying it out ahead of time and treating them as though you would treat any other adult. It's really important. It's too late to play the parent card.
Yeah.
You have to show respect. If you expect respect, then you have to show it.
I like the scripture in Ephesians 5, verse 21, and it's talking about, Christians, but it says submitting one to another. Sometimes it's hard for the parent to think of submitting to their physical child, but if you're brothers and sisters in Christ, this fits, this goes in that you need to uh, consider their feelings and thoughts and opinions and needs and so forth. And I think it's hard. One of the things that you have to do when you have adult children is you have to resist the temptation to manipulate or to control them. Haven't we all seen that done? And it is a temptation to want to, let me see, if I just do this, they'll do the way I want them to do it. So never ever works out well, though.
Yeah. I've especially seen that in a situation where an older parent has to go live with a child, which is, when you mentioned that, but that's another one that's in our future, perhaps, who knows?
Yeah.
That would have to come. And I think we need to prepare ourselves mentally how we want to. And I like that, Isla, that you're preparing your children also. If I can say this, just ignore me.
It's not how I feel.
I really try not to make suggestions about how my children should behave toward their mates in their marriage unless they would ask my advice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Dana,
what
do you?
Yeah, I was just going to say I've been very fortunate. My kids haven't had to come move in my basement. Not that we had one, but I think it is so important that we do let them be adults and that we let them make their mistakes. And they're going to make them. So did I. So did you. Sure. And we need to let them make them without ridiculing them at every move. And we had a situation, my husband and I did when we were younger, with a set of our parents that was always in our business. And we swore we are not doing that. And it caused relationship problems with in-laws and so on and so forth. And we have bit our tongues many times, but we have such a good relationship with our in-laws now, with our in-law daughter-in-laws. And I'm very thankful for that. But I mean, it's hard, but you do have to they are adults. And like you said, Jill, we have to treat them like adults.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's his mama.
Yeah, it can be. Especially when you know what's the right thing they ought.
Of course I do.
My grandmother, I've said this before on the program, my grandmother's saying that I remember from her, well, I wouldn't say anything except I know I'm right.
I like that.
So now, if we're teasing about something, I'll say to my child, I wouldn't say, but I don't know what's always the right thing to do. I'm not in their situation. Even if they told me everything, even if I'm viewing it, I still don't know their situation.
No.
So I really don't know. I know sin. Now I can talk about sin, but as far as judgment of what's the best way to deal with this, I don't know that. And so the best I can do, I like this one tip that I found was be your child's cheerleader. And I thought that was so good, as no matter what, always, be your child's cheerleader. But I can remember times when I was older, especially when I was working and teaching. My mother was retired. She was a retired teacher. When I was a teacher, when I was a school principal, she was my cheerleader on those occasions. And it was just great. I mean, it felt so good to know there was somebody who thought I was doing a good job, no matter what anybody else said. And anytime you can be your child's cheerleader, I just think that's the greatest. I love, Dana, the time that Christiana was on the program with us. It was so obvious you were her cheerleader. And I just thought that was, to me, that's delightful. And that's what we can do. And one other point I had was be your child's safe spot.
Yes.
They can come to you, and that's a safe place. That's not, if they come and tell you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dana.
I was just going to say that they know you love them, and
Mm-hmm.
you know all their mistakes, but they know you love them,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that should be the way we always are, right?
Yeah. We need to be willing to share our wisdom and our insights because we've learned them over time. That's the whole point of being, parenting and being a parent to an adult child is to be able to say, well, this is what I've seen, but always, as much as possible, wait until you're asked, what do you think? And always do that without being critical.
Right.
Because while again, it's your insight, but that doesn't mean it's perfect for this situation. It's your wisdom. I also saw this one other, it said, be a consultant, not a CEO in your child. I thought that's perfect. So you're not in charge. So,
Exactly.
I know this is a biblical principle, but I can't think of the verse right now. But remember, you could be wrong. And if you're very insistent about something, that could be a problem for you later.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and I think like you said a few minutes ago, Isla, if we're talking sin and we're talking that they're going against God's laws, and Tall and I, my husband and I, made a vow with each other that we were not going to butt in our kids' lives without permission, unless we knew they were doing something that was sinful. And that has been a good rule of thumb. And for the most part, that's what we've done. I'm not saying we always do that, but for the most part, that's what we've done. And like I said, it takes a lot of tongue biting, but that's all that really matters. If they mess up their finances, well, they'll have to clean them up. If they buy the wrong house or whatever, they'll have to take care of that. If my daughter-in-law's not the housekeeper I am, well, so, and I think that's the kind of things that we have to just let them be adults. But if they're sinning, I think as a parent, I need to, I always need to do that, but I need to do that with my brother and sisters in Christ.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so that is treating them as adults.
Right. Absolutely. And I think too, I can see how this is training for ourselves. Like Jill was saying, we have to train ourselves to do this. We have to do it when they're young. I mean, you don't get up to about 70 years old and say, oh, well, let me treat my adult children. When they're little and they do something wrong, there's a consequence for a misbehavior or for a sin. As they get older and they don't do the schoolwork, there's a consequence for that. You don't bail them out of everything, and you let them grow up. And we've all known parents that just are right there in their kids' life till they can't grow up, And we have to be able to, like you said, if they get in debt, they pay off their debt. But that starts way back. So in your 30s, 40s, 50s, as you're raising these children, you have to give them space to make their mistakes, but you're there to help pick up the pieces. That's part of it. And when they then get older and are making those decisions for themselves, it will be easier for you to let them do that and not feel like, well, I know the right thing to do. Let me tell you, so you can do that,
And it'll
really
be easier for them too.
Yes, good point there. Dana?
Well, I was just going to say, and maybe I'm transitioning where you don't want to, and tell me to stop if you do. But, I think when we talk about helping our children grow up, and if we do that and we allow them to grow up and we allow them to become responsible adults, and hopefully they will if we've trained them, then I can depend on them to care for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's that is a growing pain for me, is to start thinking about, and I'll just say it. My husband was a preacher and he did mission work much of the time. We have to die before we can retire. We don't have y'all's retirement income, and our children are our retirement, and they know it, and we know it.
Yeah.
But what that means is there's going to come the time that we're going to be beholden to them to take care of us, and I have to prepare myself, and that we're having to already prepare ourselves for that. And there have been some things with my husband's health that my kids have come in and said, okay, Mom, we got to do this. That's hard to let them come in and do that. But I'm very thankful that they're willing to do that. But I also think the only reason they're going to be willing to do that is if I allow them to do that. And I think as we're talking about getting older, if you live long enough, more than likely you're going to need your children. You're going to need somebody's help. If you don't have children, then you're going to have nieces or nephews or somebody. But we need to teach our children to honor their parents, and we need to be worthy of that honor and respect. If I don't respect my children, then they're not going to want to respect me. They're not going to want to live with them.
That's such a really good point, because what was it? One lady was saying she feels like, like a 2-year-old, I can do it myself. And she's not able to because she's much older, But we have to, for me, the mindset is my child or this person who just says, can I open the door? Can I carry this for you? Instead of saying, I'm a grown woman, I need to say thank you for that gift. You and our children are giving us that gift of caring for us as we get older, whether it's a physical gift or just that emotional support that we need. It's a gift, and we need to graciously, but you got to train your mind to graciously accept. Yeah.
My daughter called me the other day because she gave her dog accidentally an ibuprofen, and her dog, she's not married, she doesn't have children, she has a dog, and that is her child. And she was, in a panic. And so we talked, and et cetera, and, doesn't matter about the outcome. I mean, he's fine. But my point is, she still comes to me for advice. Our boys do, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, it's beginning that we look to them for things too. And it becomes this where adults sharing in a relationship, but it is going to shift, and it is going to change places. And if I live long enough, I need to do that well, and that's a mental thing, and that is a growing pain, especially if you're independent and like to do things your way, like I do.
Think of it as giving them an opportunity to do a work.
Well, they may not like that, but they're going to get it.
There you go. It's your opportunity. But yeah, that's a really good point, because I think that we think, I read a really good thing. It said, when you ask someone for a favor, you're thinking of how much trouble it's going to be for them to do this. They're going to have to do this. But when you ask somebody for a favor, they're thinking, oh, this is good. I get to help this person. I'm going to feel so good. They think of how good they're going to feel once they've done this for you, and how nice it is to be asked and so forth. And I think of that a lot when I have to, when I ask for something, that they're not thinking, oh, you're such a burden, So, and I think that we put that on our kids, that they're going to think we're a burden. Well, maybe they're going to think, if you're a pleasant person, they're going to think, oh, this is nice. I get to pay back. You know, I get to do something for mom, for dad that I haven't, you know, before. And so,
well, I hope they look at it that way.
that's the way we have. But, you know, sometimes you just have to decide how it is and just and go with it, because what else is there? But otherwise, you're just going to be miserable. So, for in a lot of ways, we just have to do like the Bible tells us to have self-control, control our minds, you know, and to think on good things. I love the passage where it's whatever things are, etc. Think on these things, and that as we age and as we face these challenges of growing, we need to think on the good things. The more grateful we are, the more we're going to find to be grateful for. And the more we complain, the more complaints we'll find. So we need to work on being thankful for the life that we have, that God has given us. And we need to think about these growing pains as leading us toward our eternal reward in heaven if we are children of God. And so I really appreciate the thoughts that y'all have brought out this evening. It's really good thoughts, and there's so many more things we could, there's so many more we could probably make a lesson every year, the whole year, every day, you know, for something, because there's so many things that can be a struggle as we're growing, but that's part of life on the earth. And we just, you know, have to do better than that, and to spiritually be children of God and obey him every day. So thank y'all for being with us this evening. Next week, we're going to be talking about the joy of praising the Lord with Janicia Jeffries. Jill and I were able to sit down with her last month and record a program that I think you all will enjoy. Janicia is she's just a delightful lady, and she's been on the program before, and I think you'll enjoy being with her again next week. In the meantime, please be sure to watch Answering Religious Error on Tuesdays at noon, and Bible Q&A on Wednesdays at noon. And listen each day, Monday through Friday, to the Daily Answer podcast. It's a really good podcast that is put on, and we are just so glad to be part of that family of Answering Religious Error. Thank you, ladies, so much for being with us this evening, and it's such a joy. It's always good to be with you, ladies. So see you next time.
Good night.